Most people who are getting close to retirement are asking themselves the question, am I really ready to do this? It's an important question to be able to answer, hopefully before you actually take the leap. But here's the thing that most people miss when asking themselves that question. True retirement readiness is not simply about answering the question about whether you've saved enough. It's about having a clear understanding of exactly what you want life to look like during this next chapter. I've had the opportunity to work with people navigating this transition now for the last 20 years, and I can tell you that the most confident retirees are not the ones that have the largest portfolios saved. They're the ones that have the clearest picture of what a successful outcome actually looks like for them on the other side of this transition. They've thought clearly about not just the big bucket list items, but they're also thinking about, what does a typical day look like in retirement? What are the things I want to dedicate myself to? Over the next few minutes, I'm going to share with you 5 questions that'll help you to answer that question more clearly for yourself. Because the more clear that you can be about what you want your life to look like, the easier it's going to become to make those important financial decisions to have a financially secure transition through retirement as well. Let's dive in. Question number 1. What does your perfect average day look like in retirement? Now, this is a question that most people will skip over, but I will tell you it's probably the most important question that you have to answer before you actually retire. When I sit down with folks, we often have a discovery conversation, and that conversation is always first about understanding, what are the things that are important to you in this next chapter? What are the things you're most looking forward to? What are your specific goals? And what does life really look like? It's not uncommon during that conversation for people to share with me all of these big picture goals, the things that they've been thinking about for the last 2 or 3 decades that they've been looking forward to, and now they get to scratch those things off their bucket list. It could be the month-long vacation to Europe, or it could be the RV trip across the country to visit all the national parks, taking your family on vacation to Disney. Whatever that may look like for you, most people have some clarity around these big bucket list types of items that they're excited to be able to scratch off once they have all this freedom of time. However, fast forward beyond that. Think about 3 years from now, on a typical Tuesday, when you put your feet on the floor in the morning, what happens? What are you doing over the next 12 to 14 hours of your day? Where are you? Where are you spending that time? Who are you spending your time with? What kind of activities are filling your day? What are the things that you're dedicating your most precious resources, your time, your energy, your effort, your attention? Who are those resources ultimately getting dedicated to? These are the kinds of questions that you want to get as much clarity on as possible, because the biggest issue that I see for folks during this next transition is not so much the financial struggle, but the psychological shift that occurs. So making sure that you're really clear about getting specific and understanding how you're going to define success during this next chapter in a typical average Tuesday or Wednesday becomes really important. Question number 2, what gives you meaning and purpose beyond your work? This is another one that really catches people off guard when they're going through this transition. I find this to be particularly challenging for really high achieving professionals. If you spent the last 3 or 4 decades of your working life building your professional career and your reputation, then chances are a large part of your identity and the way that you build value in the world is going to be tied to your professional accomplishments. And now all of a sudden that is going to go away. So making sure that you're really clear about understanding what becomes most important to you and how you want to invest your attention and your energy becomes so much more important during this next chapter, because you have a lot more time. So when we're thinking about what gives us meaning and purpose, we want to align ourselves with, what are the things that are personally most important? Who are the people that we want to make sure that we're investing our time with? What kinds of activities are going to be useful for me to be able to contribute back to the world? And that could be as simple as helping your neighbor, or it could be as big and as complicated as you want it to be. A couple years ago, I had the opportunity to start working with a young man who had put 40 years of his working life behind him, and he was already retired for 2 years when we actually started speaking. So it was an interesting conversation to talk to somebody who had already had a little bit of that time in retirement before we spoke. And so I was interested to find out what his experience had been in those initial early 2 years. And what he said was so interesting. He said, I found out after about 3 months into retirement that I was not cut out for retirement. He said, I was going stir crazy. I did not know what to do with myself. I was driving my wife crazy. And this is a reality for a lot of folks. And so I asked him what he did. He said, I went back to the drawing board. I started thinking about the things that while I was working, that I loved doing that I didn't get paid for. And part of that connection took him back to his church, and it took him back to his community. And so he followed that passion and ultimately found full-time ministry. Now, this is somebody who says he's working more today in retirement than he ever did during his actual professional years. And he said he's more fulfilled than ever. So being clear about how I want to invest my time and how to align it with my personal value system is such an important step in this process. A lot of people ask themselves these questions, but where they struggle is, how do I connect this to my actual financial strategy? That's the gap that I help people close. If you're getting close to retirement today, but you'd like somebody to help you connect that clarity to a clear financial strategy, I've walked dozens of families through this very process and helped them retire confidently. There's a link in the description where you can schedule time and we can walk through what this looks like for you specifically. Question number 3, how much do you actually need to spend to feel fulfilled? And can you give yourself the permission to enjoy it? If you've been a disciplined saver your whole life, this may be the most difficult question for you to answer. You spent decades building this nest egg, putting yourself in the position to actually retire and leave work behind. And now you're just supposed to spend it. For a lot of people, that psychological transition feels very unsafe. And as a result, a lot of successful people will not give themselves the permission to actually fully enjoy their money to the degree that they could, and they leave a lot of opportunity on the table. But if you haven't really thought through how much money you want to be able to give yourself the permission to spend and enjoy without worry, without concern, you want to make sure that you're able to attach that to a number that's going to be able to satisfy a couple of important things for you. Number one, you want to make sure that you never have to worry unnecessarily about covering the basics in life. These are the essential spending needs that you have for yourself. Beyond that, you want to make sure that you're able to expand toward your discretionary spending. And again, this is where that spending should align with your personal value system, the things that are going to give you the best chance at personal fulfillment, creating new experiences, creating new memories with the people you care about. Whatever that may be for you, you just want to make sure that you give yourself the permission to enjoy those things, because that is where the real satisfaction will ultimately come from in retirement, is being able to create those memories and experiences. Now, here's the other side of that. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make as they go through this transition is dramatically underestimating how much money I'm going to actually spend in retirement. So on one end of the spectrum, you have a group of people who struggle to give themselves the permission to spend from the money that they've saved. But on the other end of the spectrum, you potentially put yourself in a position where you really just underestimate the fact that, boy, when every day is Saturday, my lifestyle trends are likely to change. Not to mention the fact there are some expensive things that I've been looking forward to being able to do now that I finally have the time. So we want to make sure that we appropriately budget for those things and really think through what it's going to mean from a financial planning perspective. Now we can start to align our decision making much more clearly aligned to the spending objectives that are personally important to you. Once you're clear about those numbers, you can build a financial structure that gives you the permission to enjoy it without the fear of running out. Question number 4. What are the biggest risks or concerns that are currently keeping you up at night? And what are the things that you can do to help protect against them? This is the question that separates the people that are ultimately able to retire confidently and financially securely from the people that find themselves in constant financial worry and doubt. This is where we want to answer the questions around what happens if I retire into a recession? Or what happens if we experience a major market crash? What if one of us needs long-term care? What if one of us experiences a major cognitive decline? What if one of us dies unexpectedly? How is the other one going to be affected? What if we run out of money? These are not irrational fears. They are statistically relevant things that will affect retirees. So it's not a matter of if they're going to happen. It's a matter of when they happen and how frequently they potentially happen for you. It's not uncommon for me to sit down with a new prospective client, somebody who's going through the process that we're talking about right now, and the real thing that's keeping them up at night is a long-term care concern. I hear it probably as much as anything else. So many people have had the personal experience of having to care for an elderly parent or watching them have to transition into some sort of a skilled care facility. A lot of people have gone through the personal experience of how an end-of-life event can divide siblings, and how when money gets involved, it can completely change the dynamics of your most important relationships. So how do we want to build the strategy that helps us to protect against that? I was recently working with a client where this was their primary concern, long-term care, how I was going to help to make sure that we protect each other against that risk. And so there are 3 key things that we want to isolate when we're thinking about this risk. Number 1 is, what is the potential likelihood that this is going to happen for you? So there's a couple things we can do here. Number Number one, you want to look at your family history, obviously. If your parents have lived into their 90s or one of them has experienced a significant long-term care type of event, then we understand that there is an increased likelihood that that could potentially be a reality for you. Not to mention the fact that these statistics tell us that for a married 65-year-old couple today who is relatively healthy, you have over a 50-50 shot that one of you is going to require care if you live to age 85. These are the statistics. So we want to first off isolate what is the reality of this being a risk for you based on your current health, your current lifestyle, and your family history. Then we want to make sure that we quantify what that risk potentially represents to your plan. So we want to actually assign a budget figure to it. Then we want to move to solution. So we want to assess what are your current resources that you have dedicated to this, what are the potential options that we have to help narrow any gaps, and then from there we build the personalized solution. But we have to make sure that we first isolate what is the actual risk. And we want to be able to stress test to identify any of those potential pitfalls that are particularly relevant to you so that we can build contingencies and safety nets around those risks and ensure that no one single event could disrupt the success of your plan. Question number 5. What do you want your money to do for you beyond affecting your lifestyle? You spent your whole life building this nest egg and building your wealth. But at some point, you're going to want to answer the question, what do you really want it to do for you? For a lot of people, it's not only about funding their retirement. Maybe you want to help your kids or your grandchildren. Maybe you want to support causes that are really important to you. Perhaps you want to leave something behind that reflects your values. One of the most financially successful families that we work with in retirement has dedicated their entire lives to this. He's made it his life's mission to be able to impact as many causes who affect his community as possible. He feels very blessed to be in the position that he's in, and he sees this as an opportunity to really leave a lasting imprint not only on his family, but on causes that affect so many other people in the community. Not only does this kind of a strategy help to satisfy so many of the potential pitfalls that people enter into as they go through retirement, in terms of re-identifying what's most important to you, investing your time into something that's personally meaningful and satisfying, all those things, let alone your opportunity for continued impact and contribution. But it also gives you a lot of financial incentive. And so for charitably inclined people, there's a lot of planning opportunity to be able to dramatically impact your bottom line from a financial standpoint while leaving a much bigger mark on the people and causes that matter most to you. A lot of people drift through retirement without ever really getting clear on this. And as a result, they end up making financial decisions that don't directly align with the things that matter most to them. When you know what you want your money to do beyond supporting your own lifestyle, you can make intentional decisions instead of just reacting. And there you have it, the 5 most important questions that I would really encourage you to spend some time with and get some clear answers to, not just for yourself, but with your spouse. Make sure that you're on the same page and put yourself in a position where you can enter into this planning journey with as much clarity around the outcome and how you're going to define what a successful outcome really means for you up front. It's going to give you so much more clarity around the financial decisions that ultimately have to be made. Now, if you're watching this and realizing you don't have the answers to those questions, that's completely normal. If you're within a year or two of retiring today and you're beginning to have these questions and would like some help guiding you through how to connect them to your financial strategy, that is what we do. I've spent the last 20 years working with individuals and families going through this exact transition. And it is the thing that I'm most excited to be able to help people through today, helping them to connect their money to the life that they're hoping to be able to experience. If you'd like to go through a process that helps you to connect those two, I'll link down in the description so that you can schedule a conversation. We can talk you through where you are and where you're ultimately hoping to go and what ultimately needs to be addressed before you take that leap. And by the way, one last thing before you go, I am just starting to really build this channel. If you found this information useful, please be sure to subscribe. It'll help me to continue to grow the channel, and I will be continually putting out content like this every week, addressing both the financial and the non-financial complications that retirement brings to the table. I'd love to have you along for the ride.